Hi guys, my name's Callum Dicks and you're joining me today at Tunnel Barn Farm. Now whilst I'm out on the bank or in the shop, one of the biggest questions I get asked is about match fishing and how it varies from pleasure fishing and whether somebody should get into match fishing. Now for me, the difference between match fishing and pleasure fishing, there isn't a massive difference. Basically you go into your peg, you're setting up the gear, how you feel comfortable, you're using the bait, you're researching what fish you're fishing for and what sort of weights you're going to be looking to catch. So really with a match compared to pleasure fishing, the only big difference is that at the end of the day you're fishing for a prize, you're fishing for a little bit of cash or maybe a big bit of cash. So I like to try and approach a pleasure fishing session as if it is a match and try and look at every little detail that I can. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk you through exactly some of the most important things that you need to look at on your pleasure fishing or in your match situation. We're going to be looking at plumbing up, we're going to be looking at bait, we're going to be looking at setup, all the most important things that you can get out of your session to make you catch the most fish. So firstly we'll start with plumbing up. So I've dropped in on peg 20 on Extension Lake. Now I've done a little bit of research about how the venue's been fishing in general and it's fishing exceptionally well. This lake's been brilliant, there's been a lot of fish caught shallow and in the margins. Now for me, when I'm plumbing the depth, really when I'm plumbing the depth out in front of me, it's very, very simple because it's all going to be flat. There's going to be a slight margin shelf in close, but where I'm going to be fishing shallow and on the bottom, the depth is going to just be very uniform, it's very flat. The most important thing about plumbing up for me is when I'm plumbing up to features, so i.e. down the edge. I have got a little doogal out in the water there today, so if I do decide to fish up to that, when you're plumbing up to features, it's very important because it won't always be uniform, it won't be flat. What you're going to be looking at, you're going to be looking at shelves, you're going to be looking at rocks on the bottom. Today we've got some trees all around us, and what can happen, the roots can grow down into the water, and when you're plumbing up, you don't want to be fishing on top of those roots, you don't want to be fishing on top of those rocks, because what can happen, you put your bait in, the fish come along, they go above the rocks and the roots, go into your line, give you a false bite and foul up lots of fish. A lot of the time you can be fishing a peg and you can be feeding and fishing perfectly, but if the terrain of the bottom isn't correct, then you're not going to catch well. To start off with, the plummet is very important as well. I like to use heavy plummets. This is a 25 gram rubber plummet. So with heavy plummets, what you actually get, when you lower it down onto the bottom, it gives you a lot better sensation of what the actual bottom is like, how solid it is, whether there's rocks or whether there's roots. The other great thing about the plummet being rubber is that it doesn't damage your hook length. Today I'm still fishing 013 hook lengths, so I don't want to be putting an 013 hook length around a lead rubber or any other type of plummet. So a rubber plummet is really, really important. So I'm just going to show you exactly what I mean when plumbing up onto shelves and around terrain that you might not want to be fishing on. So today, one of the main methods that I'm going to be doing, starting and ending my session probably, is in the margins. So what we've got here, if I just lower my rigging about a metre from the bank, obviously the float goes under, then what I'm going to do is just inch it up, and what you can see there is that we're fishing on a shelf. It's just coming up, and then we reach this point in the peg and all of a sudden it just goes a little bit flat. I've got an area of about 8 to 10 inches where it's dead flat. Now that for me is absolutely perfect, because what the fish are going to do, they're going to come into your peg, they're going to come up the shelf onto your bait, and then where you're actually fishing is dead flat, which is perfect. That's going to give you the best opportunity of hooking every fish in the mouth and getting the most proper bites as possible. Like I said before, plumbing up out there really isn't an issue, it's going to be very flat, but like you can see there, just make sure you're dropping your plummet in and you're having a real good feel about it. Make sure there's no rocks on the bottom, make sure there's no roots on the bottom. If it's nice and flat, nice and clean, then you know when you're fishing on that spot, there's a very good chance you're going to have a good run of fish at the start or the end of your session. Right, so now I've plumbed up, I've got the positions of where I want to fish. I'm just going to talk you through the 3 types of rigs that I've set up today. Firstly, I'll go through the margin rig, which is where I'm looking to start my session. First of all, I've got a size 16 hook to a 3-inch 013 hook length. Then the main line itself is 016, and then I've got the whole weight of the float, all of my shot, just at the top of the hook length. So in total, my bulk of the shot is about 4.5 inches from the hook. Now this is really important when you're fishing in margins and when you're getting lots of fish in your peg. What you don't want is a rig that's falling slowly through the water. You can imagine fish coming into your margin peg, coming in quite quick, quite aggressive. It's going to be 20 degrees today. The water temperature's just short of 12 degrees now. So you want a rig that you're going to drop in, it's going to settle ultra quickly, sit down nice and quickly and give you the best registration of a bite as possible. Like I said, 016 mainline, and then we've got a 0.3 MVR Series 6 float, which is perfect for fishing in the margins because they're quite short. They've got a fiberglass stem, a hollow bristle, so you're going to be looking for not seeing too many liners and looking for proper bites. The line between the float and the elastic is 8 inches, which is the limit here at Tunnel Barn. I've got a brand new sample tri-core elastic in, and one of the most important bits of the whole setup is the top kit I'm using. I'm using a one-piece power smoke top kit, which is perfect for F1 fishing because you haven't got much elastic in the top kit. When you hook the fish, you can bring it in, get it in ultra quick. The fish pop up right by your keep net so you can net them quickly. But all round, a really quick setup. When you're fishing for 100 to 150 pound, you need to be efficient, you need to be quick. Now using the right float, the right shot in, the right top kit, the right elastic will aid that perfectly. The next rig I'm going to use, probably the most important rig of the day, my shallow rig. Now in match situation, I'm going to have 5 shallow rigs set up. I'm going to start off at 10 inches, then I'm going to go to 13 inches, then 16 inches, working my way through the depths, with every rig having the same amount of line between the float and the pole tip, 8 inches, which is the limit. So this is the 20-inch rig. Again, I've got a 3-inch hook length to a size 16, 013 hook length, exactly the same as my margin. Again, the same as my margin. I've got all of my bulk shot just the top of the hook length. What I'm going to be doing when I'm fishing shallow, I'm going to be spinning my rig over, slapping the water, creating quite a bit of noise. You want to be able to drop your float straight in where you've made your noise and looking to catch shallow. The float itself is an MVR Finesse 4, which is absolutely perfect. It's got a little wire stem, so the float cocks really quickly. It's got a rugby ball shape body, so if you do get a little bit of wind, you can hold on to the float so it doesn't drag along as quick. And then a very short hollow bristle, which is important for when you're fishing shallow. You don't want the rig settling slowly. Elastic, same as the margin, brand new tri-core, this coming out very shortly. Top kit again, one-piece power smoke. But then one of the most important things I've done with the top kit, I've marked all the depths. So I can have my float at 10 inch, 13 inch, 16 inch, 19 inch, and so on. Then the other rig I've set up is a backup rig. If you have to pick this rig up, in general, you're not going to win the match. This is a rig just to eke out the last few fish that are in your peg. This is a rig I've set up for fishing over the top of where I'm fishing my maggots. I've used a 5-inch hook length, so slightly longer because I'm going to be fishing in 6 foot of water. Then at the top of that hook length, I've got a number 9 dropper, another number 9 dropper, and then my bulk shot, 18 inches from the top of the loop. 016 mainline, slim bodied float with a hollow bristle wire stem. Again, I like wire just because it holds it nice and sturdy. This one I've gone for a slightly heavier elastic because I'm fishing in deeper water. This is the 6 to 9 dual core. Again, even though it's deeper and it is 6 foot, so I'm going to need a shortfall to keep my rig on, I'm still using a one-piece top kit, so there's less elastic, so it does speed you up. But that's the 3 types of rigs that I'm going to be using on a day like today. Really simple, really quick, everything's efficient about the rig. There's no hairy-fairy rigs like I would fish in the winter. Everything's bulked down, nice and quick, nice and efficient, which will allow you to catch the maximum weight out of your peg on the day. Right, so I've plumbed up my 3 lines. I know exactly where I'm going to be fishing. I've got my rigs shotted and ready to go. Now what I'm going to do is I've done my research on the venue, and the water temperature is 12 degrees, the sun's out, it's starting to warm up now. So the best way to start the session for me would be in the margins. So I'm going to attack the margin with some micro pellets and soft pellets on the hook. I've plumbed up, like I said, I've marked the depth, and it's 27 inches deep. So for me, that's a shallow enough depth to fish soft pellets. If you're looking at 32 inches, round that sort of, and going deeper from that, you're going to be looking at hard pellets. But for me, 27 inches, just over 2 foot, is easily shallow enough to go in, catch fish on soft pellets, and for that to be the right bait. We've plumbed up, like I said before. We found a nice little spot just in there, nice and flat, so those fish should be just creeping up that slope as I put that bait in. I'm lowering my float right into that little cloud of mica pellets that I'm putting in, and we should be ready for some bites pretty quickly. There you go, straight away. Literally took probably 15-20 seconds, but that's the advantage of using a rig that settles so quickly. You can drop your bait in, your rig settles immediately, and it gives you a chance of settling and getting a bite very quickly. One thing I am going to do now I've hooked one so quickly is show you exactly how I play them. First of all, I've hooked them and I've brought it out of my peg to try and create as little disruption as possible. Now it's out of my peg, I'm going to ship in. I'm going to break down my little one-piece top kit, which will bring the fish very close to you. Then you're ready to strip the elastic out. Once the fish is on the surface, very close, you scoop the net, fish up into the net. You can see how quick and effective it is when you use the right top kit, the right elastic, and when you're fishing in the right position with the right bait. Now, in general, what will happen in your sessions, you'll start in the margin. If you're on a good peg and it's a good day, you'll have a good run of fish. But the whole time that I'm going to be fishing and feeding in the margins, I've got my big bag of white maggots here. As often as possible, I'm going to be throwing them at 5-6 meters out. It's a very similar distance to what I'm fishing in the margins. So I'm going to be keep feeding them and really build that line up whilst I'm fishing in the margins. The better the margin line is and the more fish you catch in the margins, the good chance that the shallow line will be even better because you're leaving it longer. So the more fish you can catch in the margin, in general, the more fish you're going to catch shallow. So that was a perfect example of how to do it. Just drop your bait in, drop your mica pellets in, put your soft pellet over the top of it, get your rig to settle quickly, and you're going to be looking for bites straight away. Well, there you go. Look, again, it can be just as quick as that. Drop your pellets in, drop your rig in over the top, pull your fish out of the peg, net them close to you, and it really is a great method to start your session. And what you'll find is you do catch all sizes of fish. I mean, we've caught quite a few of these little stockies, but we've had some 2-3 pounders on that line as well. This is probably the best way of starting your session to catch a big weight. And the whole time you're fishing the margin, you can build up your shallow line. And if you get everything dead right, you get your timings perfect, you'll have a great start, a great spell shallow, and you could even end your day back down the margin. And that really is how you catch the biggest weights. Right, so we've had a great start to the session in the margins. We fished in 27 inches of water with soft pellets, an expander pellet on the hook, feeding mica pellets. And it really is a great way of starting your session. Just for some reason, then on venues like this, starting in the margins or across to a feature, it's just brilliant. You just get bites so quickly. And the best thing about it for me is that if you start in the margins, the whole time you're fishing, you can be feeding and building up your shallow line. The better the margin, the longer time you spend before you go shallow. So if you go down there for 20 minutes and then you can't get a bite, there's a very good chance that your shallow line isn't going to be great because you've only built it up for 20 minutes. If you go in the margin and catch for 2 hours and 20 minutes, all of a sudden you've got a different circumstance. You're going onto a line that's been fed and primed up for 2 hours and 20 minutes, and there's a very good chance that it's going to be unbelievable. These fish are going to be so confident and so aggressive when you're feeding. So like I said, the whole time I've been fishing down there, I've been feeding this shallow line with white maggots. We're just going to go in, double white maggot on the hook. I've picked my rig up, that's 16 inches. Like I said before, I've got rigs from 10 to 24 inches. We're just going to feed some maggots and see if we can get some bites. But the process I go through, before I ship out, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to feed a few maggots to roughly where I think I'm going to be fishing. I'm going to ship the rig in, and I'm going to slap the rig over 4 or 5 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm going to see if I can get a bite before feeding again. If I feed again straight away on top of my float, there you go, got a bite straight away. And the great thing about this is that if you get a bite before feeding, there's a very good chance you'll hit it. The fish are going to be most aggressive when there's less feed in the peg and just your hook bait. So like I said before, get the fish nice and close to you. We fed straight away after hooking it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to wait for the fish just to settle a touch. I'm going to feed again now. A little bit far that time. I'm going to unhook the fish. I'm going to feed again before I ship out. Get the fish in the net. Like I said before, it's really important that you use the right equipment to get efficient, to get quick. The new Signature Hyperlight land nets really do make that easy. They're so light, so strong. They go through the water really well because they've got a 6mm square mesh on them. No fins get caught up in the mesh, so it really does speed you up. It's really important for me that you get the right landing net. So before we ship out, I'm going to feed some white maggots. Make sure I get the nice wriggliest maggots. I'm going to feed some maggots. I'm going to ship my rig in, and I'm going to try and get one straight away again before feeding. Now for me, this method really is the one where you're going to catch the maximum weight. The margins and fishing across is, oh, missed a bite there, just pricked a fish, is a great way of starting and ending your session. But if you're looking to catch 150, 200 pound of F1s, this is where you're going to catch the bulk of your weight. If you can really get them competing on this method, it's a method that is a game changer, it's a match winner. So we just had a bite then. We'll flick the rig in again 2 or 3 times. Oh, there we go. See, both times, if you can get a bite before you fed on top of your float, there's a very good chance you'll hit it. So I'm going to drag the fish out of my peg, trying to create as little disturbance as possible, and I'm going to feed again. If you can get into a process where you're going in and you're getting bites before you feed, there's a very good chance that you'll hit them, and that's when you really will look to catch a big weight. 250 pound will be on the cards then. The pole I'm using is my favourite bit of kit out of the lot, is the Super Lithium pole. Important for this type of fishing because it's stiff. When you're getting lots of bites when you're fishing shallow, so you don't want a saggy pole that's going to hit the water and create disturbance. But again, I've got that fish in the net straight away. I'm going to be looking to feed, bait up, repeat the process, and if you can get the fish really competing and you can hit most of the bites that you get, that is really where you're going to catch the biggest weights and you're going to win the most matches. Right, so just going to talk you through the bait. To start off with, in general, I think these type of venues, the best bait to start your day on is pellets, because you get the quickest reaction from pellets. So today we've started on soft pellets and expand on the hook and soften 2 mils down the margin, and we've got bites and indications immediately. So the best thing about starting with pellets is that you get a reaction very quickly, and then that gives you an impression about how good your day is going to be. If you start your day off across to an island or in the margins on pellets and you're not getting many indications, that really does give you a good impression on how the day is going to be, on what sort of weight you're going to be needing to catch to win the match. If you go in the margins and you start on pellets and it takes you maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes to catch 2 or 3 fish, there's a very good chance you might not need such a big weight. You might only need 100 to 120 pound. If you go in and you start on pellets and you get bites straight away and you're catching fish very quickly, there's a good chance you're going to need 150, 180 pound. So when I've plumbed up, that's when I decide what pellets I'm going to feed. So if it's deep, i.e. 30 inches, 40 inches, a lot of the time I'll feed 4mm hard pellets. But today we've plumbed up and it's 27 inches. For me, that's a perfect depth for soft pellets. So all I've done, I've got my 2mm fishery pellets, I've poured some into my bait box and I've just covered them in just lake water. So it's literally just lipping the top of the pellets. Totally leave them on your tray as soon as you get to your peg, and by the time the match starts or your pleasure fish starts, after you set your rigs up, they'll be perfect. What you want is you want them to be all separated but really heavy. You want them to be totally soaked up in water, really heavy, so when you tip them in, they go straight to the bottom. The hook bait themselves is just a 4mm expander. Now that's even more simple to prepare. All I do is I put some water in my bait box, put my 4mm pellets in, and away you go. They do float, but as they get soft, they will add weight to it, and the weight of the hook, once your hook is in the pellet, will sink the pellet. So it's almost neutrally balanced like a wafter. That really does make a difference when you're fishing for big weights, you hit a lot more bites. So that's the pellets. Like I said, if I was fishing 4mm hard pellets, I'd be looking to use a hair rig and just whack a little band around a hair rig and tap in 4mm pellets if it was a bit deeper. Maggots, you've got two choices with colour. If the water was clear like it is here in the winter, I would use red maggots. When they sink to the bottom, I feel like fish come over the top of red maggots a lot more confidently than white maggots. But the water's 13 degrees now, and we're going to be looking to fish shallow. The water's coloured, so I'm going to feed white maggots. I feel like the fish are going to see the white maggots a lot easier. They're going to be able to pick out your hook bait. You can try double red maggot on the hook if you want a slight change of hook bait, but in general, white maggots for me are the most important. You want to try and get the freshest white maggots possible. They're soft on the hooks, you hit more bites and they sink slower. The older the maggot, the quicker they sink. So if you are fishing on the bottom, you might want to think about using old maggots. I do when I go on rivers, where I want them to sink as quick as possible in the flow. But for fishing shallow, you want the big, soft, really fresh maggots. And that's it. For venues like this, a lot of the time, some venues, casters can be good instead of maggots, but maggots for me really is the #1 bait for fishing shallow. So I do like to keep it simple. When you're fishing for big weights, you cannot mess about trying this bait, trying that bait. You need to go to your peg, fish a method and make it work to catch the biggest weights. We really are having a brilliant day here at Tunnel Barn. We started the session in the margins with pellets, caught a load of fish, and as the sun's come up, it's got really warm, in excess of 20 degrees, and we've caught a load of fish shallow on maggots. It really has been a great day so far. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a couple of minutes away from fishing just to talk to you through the setup I use, what I use and where I position it. Because if your setup's correct and you really are happy with it, not only will you enjoy your day's fishing a lot more, but you also will catch a lot more fish. It will make you a lot more efficient. To start off with, I'll go through the seat box. Brand new bit of kit. This is the Maver Signature SXI 36. Really stable, really strong. All my attachments fit exactly where I need them to be. Just a great all-round piece of kit. Last thing that you want to be doing is sitting down on your seat box and worrying about it not being as sturdy and stable as you want. This really does fit the bill for me perfect. My signature keep net arm, really important. On venues like this, you might have a 50, 60 pound limit on net. So the last thing you want to do is have a signature bar that won't capable of holding 5 to 6 keep nets. You need to be able to just bosh in 4 or 5 keep nets along the front of your setup and know that you can fill one keep net, fill the next, and really keeping track of how many fish you're fishing and what weight of fish you're catching. That really is important. If you do get that wrong, you give yourself a chance of getting disqualified. Landing net, I briefly touched on that earlier. Signature Pro Hyperlight, unbelievable bit of kit for F1 fishing. It's so important that you get your landing net dead right. It's really light, strong, but the mesh itself is 6mm square mesh, so you don't get any problems with the fins catching in the mesh, and it's really quick through the water if you do want to scoop an odd fish about. Signature Pro landing net handle, 4 meters. I use it at the slightly shorter length for 3 meters, so it's nice and stiff, so it just makes you nice and quick. Side trays, that's probably one of the most important parts of my setup. The last thing that you want is a bit of bait here and not having a side tray capable of carrying everything that you want to put on it. So on my left hand side tray is my bigger one. So I've got all my bait on this side. I've got my maggots, I've got my pellets, I've got all my kinder pots, everything that I'm going to need often, so I'm grabbing often. Then on my right hand side I've got my slimline tray. This is where I keep all my bits and bobs that I only need in certain circumstances. So like my disgorgers, my plummets, stuff like that you're not going to pick up every minute. So once you've got your keep net bar on, you've got your 2 side trays on, your boxes on, I've got a double pole sock because a lot of the time you're going to be breaking your pole down in 2 positions. We're really lucky here today because the bank is elevated behind me, so I can actually just use my rod holder as a pole roller. So if I want to break my pole down in 2 places, I can do with a double pole sock. And lastly, my keep nets. Really, in a lot of venues like this, you're going to want 4 or 5 keep nets. Today I'm using the MVI compact keep nets, which is really important because if you need to put 4 or 5 keep nets on your bar, you can do, you're not wasting any room. So a really neat, easy to use setup that allows you lots of time when you're setting up, more time to plumbing up is really important, and it keeps you more efficient. And if it's minimalistic and you can set up quickly, you'll be more efficient and catch a lot more fish. Right guys, we really have had a fantastic day here at Tunnel Barn. Firstly, I talked you through how to plumb up to shelves and looking for the right terrain of the bottom. Then I've shown you exactly how I set the rigs up and what rigs to use where. I talked you through the bait and exactly how I'm going to apply that. And last but not least, I talked you through the setup. It really is important that you get each part of that right. Not only will you enjoy your day more, you tend to catch more fish. You'll just be more efficient, and at the end of the day, when you pull your keep nets out, you will catch a bigger weight. Hopefully you can take a few tips from this and apply it to your own fishing and catch loads more fish. I'll see you again next time.